Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be cutting open this NAPA Gold oil filter, part number 100255, that was made in Mexico. And this one is a Mann and Hummel made oil filter. As you can see, it's got the little Mann and Hummel logo. So with that in mind, it's a Wix / Purolator / Mann and Hummel made filter. And the date code on the top is 12/28 of 2023. Not sure if that's going to focus because it's just kind of a stamping on there. But it is 12/28 of 2023. And looks like 13:33 and 3 seconds. So this was made at 1:33 in the afternoon on December 28th of 2023. So this oil filter was in use on my Chevy Silverado for about 4,000 miles. There's kind of a backstory as to why my oil change interval was 4,000, but the oil filter was only in use for about 4,000. I actually had the oil pan gasket replaced in January. So then I did run in the GM dealership that I brought my vehicle to. They said the specs said to just use like a gasket maker, silicone or gasket maker material rather than, or there wasn't an actual oil pan gasket for my 2018 Chevy Silverado with the 4.3 liter V6. That's a GM part that GM just says to use the gasket maker to make it. And when I did my oil change about 2,000 miles, 1,500 to 2,000 miles after that, this is the filter that came out of it. It was a Purolator Boss. But as you can see down in the pleats, not sure if you can see that in there or not, but there are some little chunks down in there. Maybe you can see that one right there. Ooh, moving all around, sorry about that. If you can see it on my glove a little easier. So there is some gasket maker material that got caught in through the oil filter, which is a good thing. That means the oil filter did its job, and hopefully those little gasket maker parts didn't make it into my engine. So that's why this filter I did kind of mid-oil change, change just the filter and put on this NAPA Gold filter. Just figured, you know, for the sanity of my own brain and a couple extra dollars, it was worth it just to throw a new filter on there, just and then pull off the other filter just to see how much of that gasket maker material was in there. So I will be interested to see. Hopefully there's not much, if any, maybe none at all, of that gasket maker material here inside this filter. So let's go ahead and get this cut open. I've got my little cheap Amazon oil filter cutter. You can get those, you know, on Amazon for 15, 20 bucks. Gloves are a little slippery. There's a little bit of oil on there. I'm going to take my old t-shirt here and kind of hold on. There we go. Set that off to the side. Here's the inside of the base plate. A little bit of oil left in there. I had this upside down draining for about a week now. Base plate, these NAPA Gold Wix made filters do have a nice heavy base plate. One of the things I did mention in the video when we were doing the oil change is to make sure that this O-ring gasket doesn't get double gasketed up on the bottom of your engine block. So this is what it's talking about, and there are little crimps on there to help keep that in place. So yeah, nice heavy base plate. Just a nitro rubber O-ring gasket on there. Looks to be in pretty good shape still. And then this one does have the silicone anti-drain back valve. Still pretty flexible, pliable. So I think that was doing its job. Although to be honest, with the Chevy Silverados, the oil filters, let's put this kind of back together. So the oil filter does sit just totally straight up and down. So the anti-drain back valve really on the Chevy Silverados isn't really a big deal, because that's more for if your oil filter is mounted sideways on the engine, or even some vehicles it's just completely upside down. So that anti-drain back valve is just basically so it blocks the oil to keep it inside the filter. So when you restart your engine, it doesn't have, you know, a dry oil filter that it needs to pump oil through again. But anyway, I know this filter fits a lot of different vehicles, and there are some Ford vehicles that use this filter that it does mount sideways. So good to know that that silicone anti-drain back valve is still pretty pliable, still pretty flexible. And these NAPA Gold / Wix filters do have this little spacer in here up above on the top of the filter. So here's our pull out our filter media and see what that looks like. Ooh, maybe. There we go. And wipe that off just a little bit. Little extra glue. Gary, the glue guy at the Mann and Hummel factory that day, got a little crazy, but not too bad. Oh, and I do see, not sure if you can see inside that gap, kind of point with my pick here. Right in there, it does look like there's a little chunk of gasket maker material right there. Ooh, a little bigger chunk. That one might be a little more visible. A little bigger chunk of gasket maker right there. And if I do take that, you know, everybody always talks about seeing their metal sparklies in their oil filters. But if I grab that with my finger, you kind of see that out there. And I can feel that it's kind of a rubbery texture. So it is that silicone gasket maker. Wow, so since my oil pan gasket replacement, this is now filter number 3 that's been on the vehicle, and I'm still picking up gasket maker material. A lot less this go around, but yeah, there is some in there. Looking at this, got a nice coil spring down at the bottom, kind of holding everything in place. Got our bypass valve down below. Looks like that's in place. Works as designed. Ooh. Inside my oil filter. Not sure if the camera's focusing very well on that. But there's a pretty large chunk of that gasket maker material. Oof. Glad the oil filter is doing its job and catching that stuff. Not going through my engine. Here's another little chunk right there. I apologize. I can't quite tell if my camera is focusing on this good stuff today or not. The inside of the filter looks okay. I'm going to turn that upside down here on my t-shirt and let that drain just for a few minutes, and we'll kind of take a look. I don't think this truck has much sludging happening yet. I've got about 90. I actually got 99,000 miles on the vehicle right now, so not a whole lot of sludging going on. Let's go ahead and cut this filter media open. And try not to cut myself in the process. This one does have the metal crimp seam on there. I'm going to go grab a pair of pliers and I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Got a little wire, or there we go. Some little cutters. Pull that out of there. Gonna tear that off. That was nice and solid. I don't think I quite went through all the filter media with my knife. Let's try to cut that and not cut myself again. There we go. A little bit on the bottom side as well. Looks good. Overall, I think the louvers look like they're cut or wide open. No big issues there from what I can see. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, you can see that. That's some pretty big chunks of that gasket maker sitting inside the filter. So I guess I may do a quick on this next, or this oil filter that I have in place right now. I may do another quick swap after 1,000 or 2,000 miles and throw another filter on there. Oh, there's some big chunks in there. That's unfortunate. My GM dealer was a little sloppy with the gasket maker material. The fact that I'm still picking up chunks of gasket maker material after 8,000 miles, which I'm glad that the oil filter is doing its job and catching that. Just a little disappointed that they may have been a little extra sloppy with the gasket maker material that day in January when we had the oil filter gasket replaced. So overall, I'm pleased that the oil filter is picking up the gasket maker material. Little surprised it's still picking it up this many miles later, but I'm glad the filter is doing its job. And you know, this NAPA Gold by Mann and Hummel / Wix - Purolator oil filter seems to have done its job. Got, I don't know if you can quite see down in there. Yeah, maybe a little bit of sludge down in there, just a little bit, but not too bad overall. Pleased with the filter, pleased with how the truck's running and doing everything else at this point. I think that'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Welcome to the channel. If you don't mind, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. And I'm going to have more oil filter, oil change, some random things that I'm working on around the house, and going to post those videos. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.